Welcome to the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast, please follow, hit the like button, or any subscribes. It really helps us with the algorithms. Santa Cruz Coffee Break is produced by the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. All opinions are those of the speakers. We invite you to join us on the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF for more fun. Now, let's get on with this installment of Santa Cruz Coffee Break. We'd like to welcome everybody to the 90th edition of the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. And today we're honored to have Richard Hoover. And Richard's going to be taking some questions that we have gotten from Instagram and Facebook and from the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum even. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much. Delight to be here.
Yeah, we're really honored. It's we know that it's crazy times, and we know how busy you are and what's going on. But thanks for taking the time to.
Oh, I'd much rather be here than running the paper plow or the administrative drudgery machine. So.
Well, before we dive into the questions, maybe we can get Richard to give us a little bit of feedback on how NAMM was.
I'd be happy to. It was very lively. We really can't compare this to the olden days because too many variables and factors have come in. So I'll just compare it to the last, few years, the last few shows, and it's building momentum. It is, it feels really vital. People are engaged. The conversations were more than just superficial business because at long last, they have given us back our precious Hall E. And for those who don't understand that, NAMM used to be a giant smorgasbord of, drums, saxophones, sound amplification, and acoustic guitars in the same place. And it was untenable, and it was no fun for anybody. And years and years and years of lobbying and working, we got NAMM to agree to a downstairs hall just for acoustic instruments, music services, where there wasn't a competition with raucous noise. And that was wonderful. And we did that for, maybe a decade. COVID changed everything. And we didn't have a NAMM for some years. And when we finally regrouped, the show wasn't big enough to separate that. And we were back to this cacophony of different people trying to sell different things, and you literally couldn't have a conversation. It was very wearing. This year we had Holly back, and it made all the difference in the world. We could have real conversations, and after all, our business is about relationships, not a new product at a low price or something like that. So I was really happy with it, and the commitments were not as great as I would have liked. By commitments, I mean people stepping up and ordering more instruments, because as mentioned in the last podcast, the market is really difficult right now. And if I can just give a recap, during COVID, people really needed to entertain themselves. They were stuck at home. They were limited in what they can do. And people were buying guitars like crazy, to return to their roots and feel good. Also things like, believe it or not, camping gear, bicycles, a huge boom in those operations and sales. So the manufacturers pushed hard to fill the stores up for a continuing boom. The stores maxed their places to put guitars. They also maxed their credit to buy guitars and camping gear, bicycles, bowling balls, etc. And then it stopped. When we were free to go about our business, the COVID boom was over, and stores found themselves with credit maxed, all their hooks filled up, and all these businesses that I just talked about couldn't place new instruments because their vendors couldn't restock. And I don't know anyone in the guitar business, and particularly the boutique business, that's not suffering right now because of an inability to restock their dealers, have their dealers honor commitments they'd made earlier. So it's really scary times. You asked the question about the NAMM, but I had to put that context in. NAM was wonderful for us. We were able to take on new dealers for the first time in many, many years, which made it fun. A real strong international presence and some dealers in the US that we couldn't open before because we couldn't make more guitars. Now, I'm gonna recap this too so people understand who we are, what we are. We're super highly skilled. When we train somebody, it takes a long time to get them to the point that they can do things in a reasonable amount of time and add to the enterprise. For a large company that does mass production, they cover that because their processes don't take a lot of training. You can watch a video, you can learn how to do it. You can probably be at work in a couple of days and productive. And I don't mean to be dismissive. You know how much I love accessible, less expensive guitars, how important that is in our business and in everybody's progress in learning guitar. However, to hit those low price targets, people will have visuals, almost like fast food, where they can do things quickly. And if somebody quits for whatever reason, you can replace them pretty quickly. More importantly, if the market is really strong, you can add more benches, you can train more people, and you can be in increased production in a couple of weeks. If the market slows down, you can likewise put that stuff in storage and lay people off. So that's not us. We are so committed to our quality and our training and the longevity of people working with us that we can't shrink and swell with a market change. Our idea is to say steady state. Our back order can shrink and swell, but what we do remains the same. And it makes it pretty delicate when the market fails because we don't want to send anybody home. So rather than drive that into the ground, we're facing, and that's one of the questions that Richard, you gave me, somebody saying, has it gotten any better? No, it's compounded. There are some businesses we know and love that are really struggling to survive. Again, not that their products aren't worthy, but the large mass production companies have much bigger bullhorn, much more power to promote, advertise, and shift with the market. That they have a extreme advantage. So the only thing good or better is that those of us that have other sources of revenue, for us, anything we don't make is made to a common denominator price and quality. They're not good enough for us. Strings, cases, tuners. So we design and make our own. And with that, we sell to others. We also sell wood to others. And that's helping us a lot to get through this. Guitar sales will improve once this glut washes out and the big companies return to a lower production rate. Until that time, it's just going to be a struggle. So your question was, how is NAM?
Well,
No,
and you were
good.
showing a very special guitar that was combined with the Ventana people.
Yeah.
Did that get well received? What was the general reaction to that?
Well, yeah, without going a deep dive here, what this was a gratitude, a show of gratitude and a show of community solidarity. I've said in context with you guys many times that the guitar making is a beautiful thing, but it's the vehicle for what we do. And what we celebrated at this show was our relationship with Ventana, which is truly one guy that makes a beautiful, framed surfboards like an airplane wing, not a foam. And he uses exclusively our offcuts to build his surfboards. And we have several people like that. And so this is a statement of, reclamation, responsibility, being able to use stuff until it's used up and not compromise. So Martijn that built this board, built it with offcuts from Santa Cruz. The skin or the covering on the top was a series of Indian rosewood backs that looked really, really beautiful. So it's functional. They don't ever buy wood. They use ours. And of course, you know, we use a lot of reclamation. So I'll go back to that question about that guitar. We also did a guitar that was a tribute to Roberto Vin School of Luthery. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary, and we used wood that was brought over by John Roberts from the very beginning. And again, our statement for reclamation and responsible harvest. We also had a really beautiful tribute to Frank Ford. Frank Ford, one of the original partner in Griffin with Richard Johnson, that has been, he passed away recently, and he was so giving and open source to so many people that, you know, many luthiers, builders would credit their success with the help that Frank gave him. So we did a guitar out of his woods with inlays that were iconic to him and told his story as well. We also had our Happy Trom signature model, you know, my beloved Happy. So it was the whole thing was a gratitude that shows our combination of working with others, amplifying each other's success. And it was a very, very cool story. So yeah, the surfboard and a matching guitar was you know, really great shameless attention-seeking device. And everything had flashbulb burns by the end of the show.
Well, and everybody who has not seen these guitars that you took to NAMM should spend a little time online to look them up. I've seen them, and yeah, beautiful, beautiful instruments with that special tribute and the special gratitude. Very, very special. So that's good to hear. I'm glad that they were well received.
They were, and a lot of press, you know, a lot of journalists. There still are, by the way. There's journalists that aren't apps, real pros. And so we got to tell the story a lot, and that was really felt warm and good.
The Frank Ford is just a stunning guitar.
Oh man, you know, on the fingerboard around the
Yeah.
12th fret is
Yeah.
little thing that the guitar is the neck is straining off the bench with this horrified look, and Frank's coming down with an axe to do some
Yeah.
precision work on it. And I think, if you know, I'm not positive, but I think that's probably Robert Armstrong's illustration from the Cheap Suit Serenaders. We really had to dig, you know, I can do an iconic inlay. I went, that's it. And we had to dig a little bit to find that. But that's
Yeah, it's a stunner. I'm gonna hopefully stop in there on Friday, and maybe I'll
oh
get
great.
maybe I get a chance to play it a little bit. you
Yeah,
know.
we still have access to the surfboard. And here's a little opportunity for a placement. We're going to do a little pop-up with Sylvan Music here in Santa Cruz, where we'll have both those companions on display, the guitar and the matching guitar. And you know, I'll be able to be there, give a presentation, question and answer. And we don't have a date for it, but keep your eyes open. That's upcoming.
Brenda and I were talking about live streaming that.
Good. Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so you know, I'll come up and run the gear, and we'll put it out there into ether world and see what happens.
Now,
That'll be a fun event.
oh, that's great. People, you know, often I'll have people go like, I can't believe you make those things. You know, the guitars, they seem like magical. And I feel the same way about Martine's surfboard. Is like, how do you do that? So it's a great complementary pair.
Well, we've kind of moved through one of the questions pretty much. You want to do the simple ones?
Yeah, I'm gonna, you know what, let me take a second on this market that's going on. We've seen a lot of shifts in the market, usually due to just hard economic times and people aren't spending money. And we have to be creative, offer new things, etc. That's kind of business as usual. This is very different because preceding this, challenge to the marketplace of people not buying was the glut that I talked about. And that's different than any, like 2008, or other downturns. And I don't know how long it will take to pull this out. But it's going to be long enough that it could be fatal to some small companies. And I'm going to shamelessly appeal to people that believe in our cause that you really consider that this is the time to buy a boutique instrument from a small company made of love. You'll pay more. But again, it's not big companies aren't deserving, but they're resilient. They have many ways to survive such a thing. But if the smaller companies don't get support, we might not have them around as a choice. It's that serious right now. So, yeah, think about it. Look at your budget and see if you can't do the right thing.
I just bruising through some ads, looking at prices of those other companies that make a lot of other guitars. There's not that much difference.
That's really become true. They've
There's
been
really
and encouraged, like, well, we're as good as them. We should charge too. And it's kind of a slippery slope there. I don't want to get the least bit judgmental, but if you find the right guitar, it doesn't matter who makes it, get that one. But to
Yeah.
buy a guitar on faith, online at a discount or whatever, it's a real crapshoot with the larger companies in what you're going to get. And, of course I'm self-serving, but I'm not talking about just Santa Cruz. I'm talking about trying to make your choices between people that really put their heart and soul in what they make. I'm getting deeper in trouble here. I think I'll stop.
No,
no,
you're not in trouble. I think you're saying the truth.
Yeah, it really is. It really is the truth. Yet you look at something that is $5,000 or $6,000 for a name on a manufactured instrument. What's another $1,000? I mean, what's another $2,000, $3,000 at that point for something that's completely yours?
You can write the copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's not just the instrument, it's also the relationship you build. The company and the people who stand behind the instrument. And
the artist playing them.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric can't put down number 2.
That's great.
He just can't put it down. He had it refretted, I guess, about a year ago, and he keeps putting up pictures, and I'm going, that's number 1, right? Because I look at the top and I go, that's number 1. And he's going, nope, that's number 2. I'm just playing number 2 right now, and I'm playing it a lot.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
So let's do a silly one.
There we go.
Slotted bridge pins. Why? Do they really make a difference?
Oh, slotted bridge pins?
Yeah.
Now this fascinates me. I tried to approach this scientifically, like how much contact is being made by the string to the combination of the bridge and the bridge pin, what transfers that energy to your ear. And you could think of one thing, which is if you have half of the string diameter cut into the bridge, the string ramp on the bridge, and half cut into the bridge pin, you are, I'm thinking, you're making more full contact with that string and the members that hold it together, and you should have better transfer of energy, string energy, to your ear. If the bridge pin is not slotted, you have half of that diameter as a nest in the bridge. You have that contact, but on the bridge pin itself with no slot, it's only touching a fraction of that bridge pin. And so you have much less contact for transfer of vibration. What does that mean to your ear? That's an experiment that I just don't have the bandwidth for, and it really is, it'd be worth some good scientific inquiry to find out what's true. And as always, if you can hear it. It comes around every few years, and it's right now it's in vogue. I've seen it pop up a few places, and again, this isn't dismissive. We love to talk about our guitars. We love to buy toys for them, and to have a thing like this, you know, like I'll try fossilized ivory, I'll try a non-slotted bridge pin. The science that you do, you have to make sure that you don't throw more than one variable in. Don't change the material of the pin while you experiment with slotted or not. We use slotted because it's more traditional, it's more acceptable, more, you know, just more universally accepted. And if I had to defend it practically, again, with physics, I would think we make better contact with that. But opinion alert, I haven't done the science on that, and all I've heard is opinion. And opinion is, of course, worth just what you pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you know, as you're sitting there talking about it, I've always had slotted, but I never really thought about the contact on the, just the minimal contact on a non-slotted pin.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, and it would be, there'd only be one contact point. And
Seemingly so.
And if you put the string in right in a slotted pin, you're actually almost even getting the pull from the brass end, and that's kind of part of that thing too. So
yeah, so I will throw two things out there. One is a guitar company which shall not be named was well known for simply drilling straight holes through the bridge and then shoving a tapered bridge pin into it.
Without a string ramp in the bridge or a slot in the...
Right, yeah. So that they wouldn't be a tapered hole with a tapered pin, it's just a straight hole with a tapered pin shoved in there.
Yeah, so you'd have 2 points of contact.
Yeah,
that's
but,
it.
But it wouldn't even be a good solid connection between the pin and the bridge or anything else. The other thing is I think that a lot of the string ramping probably came up when people started wanting to lower their action more because the neck may have moved a little bit, the top may have bellied some. And so they were ramping behind the saddle in order to increase the break angle. And so when they did that, I don't know if you had to, but it almost made more sense to rotate the pins around 180 degrees. Just so that there wasn't a big slot there for the ball to get stuck in or whatever else.
You know, God and physics both have great senses of humor.
Yeah.
When you try to figure out things logically, sometimes you get some real surprises.
Yeah.
But I do want to say this, is we talk about these things in concept, but practically speaking, when they're done, is this being done by a one-off luthier that's trying to do everything possible to optimize the sound of the guitar? Or is it being done in a production context with one size fits all? So if you just machine a string ramp and it's not machined to that diameter of string, you're not getting the full benefit. Same way with the slot and the bridge pin. So you can kind of imitate it, but again, you could be having minimizing your contact with that. So I'm trying to really carefully say, yeah, I can give you opinions on this, but my rule is to warn you if it's an opinion. And again, it's worth just what you pay for it. I don't have the science. I've read things that were supposedly definitive, but they were speculation, and they were based on not only assumptions, but they were based on that somebody would actually machine that correctly to fit that string and diameter in both the bridge and the thing, not just kind of a general attempt by a factory. So sorry to be a spoiler here, but I thought about looking into that, and it's like return on investment. Like, you know, I'm just gonna say I don't know.
Yeah.
If you figure it out,
you know, the science of that, if you really did get into the science,
each pin, if you made one slotted and one non-slotted, would have to be made from the same stock.
Oh, well, oh, yeah.
You know, and really the rabbit hole just gets deep. I mean, at that point, but yeah, because it would, you know, it just couldn't be, oh, I've got two sets of pins here, you know, this one and this one. Well, that's opinion alert. You know, the duck falls from the ceiling right about now.
It's a perfectly reasonable question.
Yeah, it is. No, it
but,
is.
I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
It all leads into the theories that I had heard people put out there, that different materials for the different strings for the bridge pin would make a large difference in the sound of the guitar.
Oh, heck yes.
Well,
Yeah, slot or not, right?
Well, but I mean, if you have different materials in each bridge pin, I mean, how are you actually going to start testing all that? I just
got a headache.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you know, the materials that the bridge pins are made out of will definitely change if it's wood, if it's brass, if it's a different metal alloy. And I remember when it was really popular to use fossilized ivory, you know, walrus, elephant, whatever, fossilized. But fossilization isn't an off and on switch. It's a progression, and you go all the way from the durometer of modern ivory that the elephant's wearing to something that is agatized and literally turned to stone over time. And there's a whole range in between there. So just calling it fossilized ivory you wouldn't determine anything. It's the actual piece that you would choose and how hard it is. And that will make a difference, of course.
Oh, sure.
But 6 different materials, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
We'll put brass in there too. You know, let's put in a couple of brass bridge pins.
Yeah. Wow.
I think the second question, your method for voicing guitars when a customer asks for a particular sound, boy, I think that's a statement of who you are.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
You know,
I almost want to pull that up and read it because I had a couple of layers there. What the query is, you know, talking about bracing to control EQ. And let's be careful to define our terms here. EQ is frequency, high or low, bass and treble. There's something I would generally call tone, which is the level of clarity, bright, clear, and articulate to warm, dark, blended. That has nothing to do with EQ, and EQ has nothing to do with that tone. So in bracing a guitar top, think of this. If you take your guitar string and you make it tighter, it'll ring at a higher frequency. If you make it more flexible, it'll ring at a low frequency. And that's really what we're doing with the bracing. We're manipulating the mass of the bracing to either make it flexible or stiff. And it's not symmetrical. We have on a right-handed or left-handed guitar, you have a bass and treble side. And even though the strings excite the whole thing, the onset transient, when it first takes the energy, is going to be affected by how stiff it is or how flexible it is. And that's where we begin to control the EQ. And this is a really difficult thing to do without a whiteboard and illustration here. But in your mind's eye, people know what tapered braces look like, and they know what scallop braces look like. And what scallop braces do is they make the area of, let's say, kind of the mid-range, but mostly the bass side of the guitar more flexible, less stiff, and it promotes bass response. So you'd see a scallop brace guitar in a pre-war dreadnought, a guitar designed for a more predominant bass, and you'd achieve that. in the scallop brace, you actually actually weaken the stiffness of the treble a little bit, as well as scallop the braces for the mid-range and bass. So that gives you a predominant bass in the EQ, and it's very desirable if you're playing bluegrass, and a lot of styles. Most people like a predominant bass. If you're playing jazz or a classical or a style where you want to determine the EQ on each string in the context of each song you play, you want to come out with an even EQ to start with. And that's done instead of scalloping the braces, is tapering them. So you're the stiffest in the treble, less stiff in the mid range, and the least stiff in the bass. And you can get a pretty even EQ. Nobody likes an even EQ. It doesn't sound right to our ear. We want a little predominance in the bass. So even in a scallop bass guitar, we will, I'm sorry, a nice evenly balanced EQ, we will favor the bass a little bit to get that. So you can do that by how you shape the braces. EQ is also controlled in, let's like luthery, like in violin science, by taking the top itself, and it's not a uniform thickness. It would be predisposed to the EQ you want by tapering it, making it thinner on the bass side for more flexibility, stiffer on the treble. And in our style, that might be 1 to 4/10 of a millimeter, depending on how much of a difference we make. So we'll start with the top before the braces even go on and begin that voicing, if you will, to get it. And there's two things we're doing. We're trying to nail the EQ for that customer or that playing style, but we're also trying to deliver the scale of clarity to them. And I hope this doesn't give you a headache, but you could have a muddy treble and a clear bass. That's the difference in that. And this is a real myth buster. That comes from your choice of woods. Not only the name of that kind of wood, but the particular piece within that species of wood that you choose. It's not stiff or not stiff. It's a weight to strength ratio. I think it's radial coefficient. The weight to strength ratio gives you that scale of clarity. If you had 10 little bells and they rang at the same frequency, the same volume, but one's made out of silver and one's made out of bronze, you get it. The silver one's going to ring clean and clear. The one out of bronze is going to be warm and blended. And depending on your style of playing, one of those will be more desirable than the other. And we get that from the choice of wood and the particular choice of the piece we're using. So sorry if there's a headache there, but that dispels a lot of mess. We don't get bass and treble by the name of the wood we use.
That is about a master class in guitar making
as I've to that, yeah.
as I've ever heard in that short a time. That was unbelievable, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a workshop at the Mondo Musica in Italy in Cremona. What a great honor.
Wow.
And I'll try to stretch that into at least a day's talking.
Yeah. Well, that was truly, I think that's the first time I've ever heard you use this example of a string. And that started the visualization for me. It helped me understand everything you were saying. So how many times have we talked in all these times? Wow, that was worth their price of admission right there.
Well, what we're doing is not really better or worse, if you could put it in context. If you're trying to get a serviceable guitar at a really cheap price, nobody can take the time to consider these things and give you a good bargain on a guitar. It's a lot of work. We do it efficiently, but it goes into every guitar we build. And I want to put people at ease. You don't have to know what to ask for. These are things that, like, some people go, oh man, that gives me a headache. I think I'll go buy a tailor. It's easier. right? But these are the things that we can determine when you hear somebody play, what genre they like, who their influence is in guitars, what do they like in the guitar, what they don't like in the guitar. With half a century of practice, we can nail that for somebody and get them what they want. So oftentimes in setting someone up with a guitar, it's to our disadvantage to go that deep in a conversation. Our what we do is really difficult to explain. It's really difficult to market. But if the sound of our guitars didn't prove that was superior, yeah, it'd just be a lot of noise.
Well, that kind of
Well,
that shuts the door on that one for me.
Well, the guy was asking about, literally about how do you, use the you use the braces to manipulate EQ. And there's no right or wrong in EQ. Anything on your sound system that you have a knob or a slider means it's personal choices. And EQ is one of them. There's another, the bigger the airspace, like the difference between a double O and a dreadnought, let's say, generally speaking, the larger airspace will promote more bass unless you moderate that by how you shape the braces. So bigger guitar is usually more bassy in general. The other thing is the size of the sound hole. It's great to bust this myth, excuse me, yet again, is Herman Helmholtz, brilliant seminal acoustic physicist. From I think around the early part of the last century, set the standard for apertures on resonating chambers, and he did the science on it. We used it in everything. He was a hero of bows and tuning mufflers and making sound systems. And the idea here is by changing the aperture on a resonating chamber, and he used a series of bottles with different necks and holes. You change the pitch or the frequency of the chamber itself. So when you have a sound hole in a guitar body, the bigger you make it, the higher the frequency of the body becomes, and you accentuate mid-range and treble. Now take that on the internet, and you can argue about it for days with people, but that's what happens. A bigger the sound hole brings the guitar into like a less predominant bass and a more even EQ. The smaller you make it, the lower the frequency becomes. So if you take a little guitar and make a small sound hole, you're bringing more bass in it. You make a bigger guitar with a larger sound hole, you're bringing more mid-range and treble. So all those things affect the EQ in the guitar. And if somebody wants a certain look, and I should just tell, there's different ways to achieve that and get people the look that they want.
and tell me if I'm wrong, but isn't that kind of what it is behind the Tony Rice guitar?
It's very much so.
It's not a bluegrass guitar. It's a clear, higher frequency definition.
Well, that's a really good start. It's a great place to dispel that myth. Tony didn't want a copy of his old herringbone. He already had that. And that guitar was great for when bluegrass was the instrument shared a microphone, and the guitar was the drums. The guitar wasn't the lead instrument. And being predominantly bassy, kind of woofy and tubby, if that doesn't get me shot, was perfect in that context. But when people like Dan Crary, Doc Watson, Norman Blake, Tony Rice started stepping up to the microphone and playing the leads that used to belong to the fiddle and the mandolin, that's where, and then playing with the Grissman Quintet with jazz phrasing, that's where he needed a different voice in his guitar, not to replace his old bone, but to complement it for a different style of playing. And we inherited the large sound hole for reasons really lost to history. There's variations of how that happened, and Tony himself told me 2 versions of how that happened. But it wasn't done as a sonic modification for that guitar. It was done just because. You know, the sound got ragged. Clarence supposedly trimmed it back, and not thinking about what it did for the sound. But we had to look into the physics of what would that do, because everybody wanted to know. Tony wanted that. He didn't know why, but he wanted that large sound hole. And with help from both scientific reading, my mom was a superstar reference librarian, and Roger Simonoff's work, we found out, oh, that's not only what the sound hole does, but that's enlarging it, but that's really desirable for what we're trying to do for Tony. So there's no speculation there. It's done, honoring the scientific method to get a less bass heavy EQ. How about that?
Okay. All right, all right. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, it sounds to me, and I'm going to make this assumption, you can straighten this out as well, that probably one of the most difficult to train jobs is to voice a top at
Yeah.
the top. I mean, I got to imagine that the people who are trusted with voicing the tops have probably been there a while and have probably spent a fair bit of time working with you before they're given a top with some braces glued on it and a chisel.
Oh man.
Hmm.
I know my answer. I'm just thinking carefully about how I want to say this. That's one of those things that there's a bit of mystery why some people can get it really easily, and some people just end up with a pile of sawdust and never hit their target. And I think that's true amongst the landscape of different luthiers. Some people get right away what we're trying to achieve, and some people just don't suss it out. It's we've done world changing research on modal analysis, and so that we can quantify that, so there's no question you got it or you didn't. But in teaching it to people as learned behavior, there's some people that it just doesn't come to them. And I can't quite explain that. But I could say that, I've got a special way of learning, and there's some things I just can't get by explanation. I got to do it myself. And this is one of them. It doesn't make it mysterious. It just makes it hard to quantify in words. So therefore, it's very difficult to teach. And where you said practice makes perfect, I'd like to say that's always true, but in my experience, not really. Some people get this right away, and some people never get it. And, that has kind of some delicious mystery, but at the same time, I don't like mystery as a cover up for good scientific knowledge. So I make a real mess out of that. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily just practice, but practice is irreplaceable when it comes to comparative analysis. You do something one time with nothing to compare it to, you neither know how to repeat it or whether you're getting what you want. It really does help to do 10,000 of them, and know exactly what happens when you touch this or do that.
All right.
So that's the best I can give you on that. Don't try
No,
it at home.
that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And then just one quick follow up, because I think that you're saying it is better than anybody else. There have been people online who have claimed to be able to improve the sound of guitars by reaching into the sound hole and shaving and scalloping and modifying the bracing of the guitar after it's been built. I've always thought that's a tremendously bad idea. But I don't have the expertise to say that in general. But you do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of those things. Like I said, some people get this, some people don't. And somebody that doesn't get it should not be shaving the braces on your guitar. The first person I ever heard doing that was John Lundberg, who was the major mentor to Richard and Frank, rest his soul, at Griffin. And that's what he did, because he was really, he's really way ahead of the curve. He understood the difference between a pre-war Martin and a 1970s Martin. And a big part of that was that, Martin, post World War II, there was such an incredible boom and demand for guitars that Martin could have done anything and still sold everything they could make. And one of the things they did is made the guitar more stronger to mitigate warranty obligations, and they really heavied up their braces. And we all know what that made them: less desirable, less predominant in the bass, and just less loud. And John was going in through the sound hole, and the Martin braces at that time, like the legs of the X and the tone bars, were just a long uniform height brace tapered at the end, and he was scalloping those more in the pre-war style, getting more bass response and more overall volume to the guitar. There could have been others out there at the same time, but he was the one that innovated that. And yeah, he made a difference. He had a lot of comparative analysis, and he had a real gifted ear. It's not a good idea for the guy in the basement of a big box store to try to learn on somebody's guitar, but somebody that knows what they're doing can affect a big change. But remember, some of that's subjective. You might not want a real predominant bass guitar like a pre-war Martin, but that's the way to do it, is to go in and scallop those braces that weren't scalloped. Tuning, I have no idea if he was trying to tune that assembly, but he was affecting a louder guitar with more bass.
Okay.
And Frank and Richard did that too. They may have changed their philosophy or their pitch about it in later years, but it was a remarkable difference. And what I'm saying is, like, depends on your skill level.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
It's a lot easier to do it when you make the guitar, mind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do it right the first time. So as long as we're on the top, we have a purfling question. And that's the top question. And the question is the role in perforating. Perforating. Boy, that was a new word. The role, I just invented a word. Yeah, the role in purfling can play in isolating the top from the sides. Well, we all know that the myrtlewood purfling sounds way better than the maple, but and it's a big joke, I'm sorry, but say they do a type 42 or a type 45 with some abalone in there.
Yeah.
Is there scientifically a difference? Is it
Yeah.
does the visual season the pot before you get in there?
Well, I'm just going back to the violin tradition, which is I'm a huge fan of the science with why the violins work the way they did. And there's no one person we can credit with the innovations. Amati gets a big vote for the modern style and so forth. But I like to think of it as evolution, just like human evolution of knowledge, improvements, continuous inquiry. And let's look at this. The violin is this remarkable little machine that can cut through this raucous orchestra all the way back to a big concert hall and be heard acoustically. That's pretty miraculous in itself. And the fact that it has to deliver really sophisticated sonority too is pretty amazing. It's a complex machine. One of the ways that it can be so focused and loud is it directs its energy to the audience, not to the player, not open area ambient around. It's very, very focused. And one of the ways that that's achieved is to decouple, so to speak, the top from the body of the instrument. So that when you bow the violin, you're not vibrating the whole thing to radiate, you know, like a ball 360 degrees. You want to focus that energy out the F holes to the audience. And there's a couple of ways they do that. One is the purfling, the little black, white, black edge that goes around the top and the back. You know, the violin doesn't seem to have binding, but it does. That seems to be inset a little bit from the sides, but it's not because the violin top overhangs. So that purple is actually right there on where the top joins the sides. And it comes from wood, but it's not wood. It's been ground up, rolled out like a felter of fiber, and it doesn't conduct resonance. Solid wood would conduct resonance, many other things would, but this is kind of inert. Vibration doesn't pass through it very easily. So now imagine you excite the string like dropping a pebble in a pool, and that ripple moves out to the edge evenly of the violin. But what it encounters is not the sides where it would transfer into the instrument and it'd be volume for the player. It's decoupled by that fiber that doesn't take resonance into the framework of the instrument. Instead, the only place you can go is returns to the top and pumps more air that goes out the F holes to the audience. So that little bend returns that energy back to the top and sends it out to the audience. So there's one. Also, that's what we use in our guitars, and whether it's a traditional purple that's black, white, black, we can reconfigure that into a herringbone, whatever. It could be any combination, but the important thing that it's not solid wood, it's fiber, is the magic behind it. Now, the bindings themselves on a guitar are important too. We don't want to use a like an you know, I don't know how to describe the durometer of ABS plastic or something like that. We want to use something that approximates wood. We either use wood for that, or we use a celluloid like ivoroid, which is composed of celluloid, which is what wood made out of, a man-made thing. But the purple, that's the magic of it. You want more?
No.
There
And
is. There is. Now there's another internally in the violin. You know, you can hear guitar makers speculate about everything, and what should our people in the violins call lining. It's a little reinforcement around the corner of the instrument to increase the gluing surface of the top back to the sides, but it also does that decoupling and isolation. In the violin, it's made out of traditionally basswood. It's called linden in Europe, and it's soft. It's just like the purple. It won't conduct vibration. So again, when the dropping a pebble in the pool, it moves out to the edge. It's not going to transfer into the back and sides, come back into the top. And that's why we use basswood for our linings, to get more power out to the audience than to the player. Whether it's slotted or not, you know, who knows? You'd have to experiment with that. But the material made out is really, really important. And this is one of the reasons you'll find that in, like, let's call it the contemporary lutherie, heavily weighted towards California lutheries, where the guitar is super bright, super clear, but not horribly complex. More of a, yeah, more favors clarity and brightness. And it also favors a really big presence to the player. And part of that is making a resonant lining and using resonant materials for the binding to make a huge difference sound. So that's why we use the purple, and that's why if we didn't, our guitars would sound like everybody else.
got it.
That's
What a snob.
no,
Yeah, got it.
when there were the big guitar shows, you had a chance to experience that kind of thing, because there were people who would build guitars with really heavy hardwood rims.
Yeah. Mhm.
And when you played them, you could definitely hear the difference.
That was huge to the player. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and even there's some I don't want to call them cheap. some lower end models that have come out where the builders don't put any binding or any purfling around the top at all. The top is glued straight to the sides and then routed. And again, you can hear the difference where that top is so tightly coupled to the sides and it isn't really able to move the way it would in a traditional construction.
Yeah, that is a little flex point too. And subjective, we do it that way because we want the guitar to be the most efficient tool possible for the luthier, for the player, and that's to inspire the audience to change the world. If you might like that opposite, if you were composing, playing alone, I don't know. So I'm not going to say we don't do it because we think it's better, but I think it's more appropriate for a professional tool to be louder out front than it is behind it.
It's a complex machine.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Wonderful stuff.
It's a complex machine. The last thing we have, and I know that we have covered this in other podcasts on the strings, but from the forum, somebody asked where parabolic comes from.
That was fun. Yeah, he was a mathematician. And what was that term he used? It wasn't cantilever, it was cantilever.
Catenary?
C-A-T-E-N-A-R-Y.
Catenary.
Catenary is what happens if you had cables, let's say, and you let them sag, and it's the shape they would make, right? And as you make tension, of course, they would change. And parabola is a little different shape. And it really was evocative to me, because when he said, I know that strings would operate more on a, what's the word again?
Cantilever.
Cantilever way than a parabolic way. And I thought about it and I went, I see the difference here. So let me explain what the parabola is about. Back to violin study, the tension of violin strings is critical for their optimal operation. And it has nothing to do with the gauges as much as how they pull. And that's what we set up our guitar on, is not the gauges, but the tensions. And remember, you can have the same gauge string, but you can increase or decrease the tension by the ratio of the quarter wrap. So what we wanted is we wanted a pull on the bridge that pulled it optimally. And that happens to look more like a parabola to me than any other geometric shape. And that's why I choose that. So parabolic tension means if you were to graph the tensions of the strings, it would look more like a parabola rather than a radius or the other word. And that's simply all there is to it. Don't overthink it. And the reason for that is strings up to that point were made in random tensions. So when they pulled on the bridge, they weren't pulling uniformly. Think of this, the steel string pin bridge works by anchoring the strings underneath on the bridge plate, pulling straight up, moving forward a little bit and pushing down on the saddle. So the bridge rocks towards the sound hole. That's what produces the sound. If you were pulling a little cart and you had different size animals with different lengths pulling at random amounts of tension, your bridge is going to not rock uniformly. It's going to twist. It's going to wobble. It's not going to transfer optimal energy to your guitar top in your ear. But if you put those tensions in a logical array, in our case, modified parabola, the bridge gets pulled super uniformly. So it takes less tension to get more volume, and the guitar is easier to play. So there you go.
Yeah.
And we might have made better use cantilever, but it's not quite as sexy a term. So to our scientists, we picked parabola because it drives us crazy.
More people can pronounce it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And I can understand his confusion.
yeah. Um, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's always a blast.
You can have the rest of the day off to do
Oh,
all the really fun stuff that you have to go do.
and it is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll we'll try to keep people updated on this pop-up at Sylvan, because if we can send it to the world rather than to just a few people in the room, it might be pretty exciting.
Oh, there's such a profound story there. We want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
We're in this, we deal with this just remarkable materials, and I, have a huge responsibility being a shepherd of it, and to keep it going as far as possible. Sometimes it's really eye-opening to people to see that done in, practical, or even better in things they'd love to have. So yeah, come on over. We'll have some fun.
Everybody wants to see Richard out there on the Monterey Bay on top of that beautiful surfboard.
Me?
Oh, I wouldn't, you don't want it to touch the sand. It's so pretty, you wouldn't want to get it bumped into anything.
Yeah, I can only imagine. They do beautiful, beautiful work. Beautiful.
Yeah.
As does Santa Cruz Guitars.
Yes.
It's a good team.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for the time and for what you put into this. And if anybody's sitting on their wallet, time to buy a guitar.
Thank you for that.
You know,
I hate to bring it, as I said before, guitar making is, being a commercial pursuit is just a way for us to perpetuate our work, our cause. But it is a good time to think about not only supporting us, but other serious luthiers and makers. And I said this last time, and I will say it again. It's been only a couple of times in our career that we had inventory. And it's because custom guitars that were ordered, sometimes many months ago, when they come due now, sometimes the store is not even in business anymore. So
Yeah.
we actually do have inventory, and we have a couple of programs to get guitars in the hands of people a lot easier than they did before. And I want people to look for this. We haven't announced it yet, but we're working with up and coming artists to try to help them get into instruments that they normally, couldn't. To get a real serious professional instrument quicker, better. We're working on some financing programs, so don't hesitate to give me a call. I'll fill you in.
Awesome.
thank you very much.
Okay,
Yes.
you guys,
Okay, take care. Have an
have
afternoon.
nothing but fun. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this installment of the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. For more music-related fun, please join the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF or santacruzguitarplayers.com. If you have any questions or possible podcast topics, please contact us. If you have a product or service that you feel would be of value to our listeners, please consider adding your support and keeping the coffee pot on. Contact us for more information. We ask that you hit the like, follow, bell, or bookmark buttons so we can keep you informed of upcoming podcast episodes. We hope you enjoyed Santa Cruz Coffee Break. Now it's time to go play your guitar.